In some families, love is loud. In others, it's measured in silence, in who gets the top bunk, who gets the new bike, who gets asked how their day was. For Elias, it was always silence, and silence has a weight. From a young age, Elias learned that in his house, the best things went to Logan: the top bunk with the firmer mattress, the first bike with smooth tires, the new school shoes that never passed through someone else's feet first. Elias got the hand-me-downs, the leftover room, and their parents' attention. The second turn at everything. By high school, the pattern had hardened into routine. When Elias asked for a guitar to join music class, his mother shook her head gently, eyes already on Logan's college prep books. "We need to save. Logan has tutoring to pay for," she said. No apology, just a fact. When Logan failed his college entrance exams, his parents scrambled to send him to the best private center in the city. When Elias earned a full scholarship to a prestigious tech program in San Jose, their father said only one thing: "Good, you'll take care of yourself." So Elias did. He stopped asking, stopped expecting. He became the kind of son who didn't need much, the kind who made peace with being invisible at family dinners and absent from photo walls, the kind who showed up for Thanksgiving only to hear there weren't enough chairs. Everything became easier to swallow after he came out as gay at 19. Not because the family accepted it, but because they didn't react at all. No yelling, no kicking him out. Just an uncomfortable quiet whenever he mentioned a boyfriend. Just his name missing from group texts, just another mix-up. Whenever a family event passed without him, he got used to watching holidays through social media posts and hearing about milestones after they'd passed. Elias wasn't disowned. He was slowly erased, and yet there he was again at the table like nothing ever happened. Spoon in hand, eyes down, sitting at the edge like a visitor in his own home. Across the table, Logan, freshly shaved and confident as ever, cleared his throat. "I need Mom and Dad to co-sign a $700,000 mortgage just for a year. Once we qualify, their names come off." Not a please, not a glance toward Elias, who continued chewing silently. Their mother, Marlene, hesitated. "If I'm putting my name on something that big, I'd like it on the deed, at least for now." Logan's face darkened. "You make it sound like I'm gonna steal the house. Don't you trust me?" Nobody looked at Elias, not until he spoke, softly, almost involuntarily. "I think it's reasonable. If it were me, I'd want the same." Logan turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "Right. And what would you know about family or home? You don't exactly live a traditional life." The words hit the air like a slap. 1 second of silence. No one moved. Their father looked down. Marlene bit her lip. Logan resumed eating. So did everyone else. And Elias, just like he'd done all his life, swallowed it, swallowed the rice, the shame, the reminder that in this house he would never be the son worth fighting for. But he didn't know that this time, he wouldn't let it end there. If this story resonates with you, hit like and subscribe to Heart Stories, where every unheard voice gets a spotlight. What would you have done if you were Elias at that dinner table? Let us know in the comments. A week passed. Logan emailed over the mortgage paperwork drawn up by his lawyer. No greeting, no warm-up, just PDFs attached with clinical precision. In bold letters on the front page, guarantee agreement, in smaller print underneath, parents listed as guarantors only. No ownership, no legal authority to intervene. Marlene read it at the kitchen counter, coffee cooling beside her. Her fingers shook slightly as she flipped through the pages. Jargon stacked on jargon clauses that locked them out of every decision, her name on the line, but never in the room. Richard sat across from her. He used to be an accountant. Contracts didn't scare him, but this one did, because this wasn't a transaction. It was a mirror reflecting how little they now meant to the son they had raised. He reached the last page, paused. The lines for their signatures waited like open traps. "If he trusted us," Richard said quietly, "why would he send us this? Why would he need to keep us out?" Marlene didn't answer. Later that evening, Logan came by. Alone, no kids, no wife, just him, briefcase in hand, as if visiting clients. "This is just standard protection," he said flatly, gesturing at the contract. "We're investing everything into this house. We can't afford complications." Marlene didn't respond right away. She was peeling apples for the grandkids' favorite pie. Though they hadn't visited in days, her hands paused mid-motion. She looked up, voice soft but steady. "And what do you think I'm investing in, Logan?" He frowned. "What do you mean, boss? My whole life," she said, placing the peeler down, "has been poured into this family. Every year, every holiday, every meal, I gave you my time, my health, my peace of mind. That was my investment, and now you bring me this paper, this contract, as if I'm someone you might sue. Logan's jaw clenched. It's not personal, it's precaution. But it is personal, she whispered. It tells me you see us as liabilities, not parents. The silence that followed was different from the dinner table's silence. This one wasn't passive. It burned. Logan gathered the papers and left without saying goodbye. The next morning, he texted that the kids wouldn't be visiting this weekend. No explanation, just silence again, weaponized now. Days passed. The house fell quiet in a different way. No cartoons in the background, no toy cars left underfoot, just creaking floors and a mother sitting alone holding a pair of tiny socks in her lap. Elias came by on Thursday. He noticed the untouched pie on the counter, the pile of folded laundry, still smelling faintly of baby powder. But he didn't ask. He just poured his mother a cup of tea and sat beside her. When she got up to get napkins, he quickly reached for the mortgage draft she'd left folded on the table. His eyes scanned it fast, his jaw tightened. That night, Elias didn't sleep. He searched property law forms, made calls to friends in real estate, reviewed his savings. A quiet plan formed. He didn't say a word about it. Instead, he came back the next day with tools in hand. He fixed the garage door that had been jamming for months, replaced the cracked tile in the hallway. Cleaned out the gutters. Marlene watched through the window, lips trembling. At dinner, she asked gently, "Why are you doing all this?" Elias looked up. "Because no one should have to feel like they don't belong in their own home." She said nothing. But the next day when Elias returned, the apple pie was warm again, and there were 2 forks on the counter. The distance between them had always existed, between the child she didn't know how to protect and the mother who thought silence was safety. But now that space began to shrink. Not with words, not with apologies, but with actions that couldn't be unsigned, unfelt, or unseen. And Elias, for the first time in a long while, didn't feel like a leftover. By the 3rd week, Elias had become a fixture in the house again. Not as a guest, not as a quiet presence at the edge of the dinner table, but as someone who fixed leaky pipes, regrouted the shower tiles, rewired the old porch light, so it no longer flickered like a dying star. Each repair was small, almost invisible, but they were the kind of acts that whispered, "I see this house, even if it never saw me." He brought over groceries without being asked, remembered to buy the herbal tea his mother liked, quietly refilled her prescriptions before she ran out. Elias didn't ask questions when Marlene had off days. He simply adjusted the curtains to let in more light and made her breakfast before she even stepped out of bed. He never mentioned Logan, never asked why the grandchildren hadn't visited. He knew better than to force a confrontation. Instead, he created space clean, warm space for grief to unfold in its own time. One rainy morning, Elias found his mother in the attic. She was surrounded by storage boxes holding a faded photo album in her lap. She didn't look up when he entered. "I used to tell myself that the more I gave Logan, the more he'd understand love," she said softly. "But maybe all I taught him was how to expect it, not how to return it." Elias sat beside her, careful not to speak. Sometimes grief doesn't want to be answered. It just wants to be allowed. "I didn't mean to make you invisible," she added. "You were always the one I never had to worry about. You did well, you stayed quiet. I thought that meant you didn't need me." "I did," Elias said gently. "I just stopped asking." She looked at him for a long moment, then she reached into the box and pulled out an old envelope. One of the few letters Elias had sent home during college. The handwriting was shaky, crowded, but the words were unmistakably his. "I hope you're proud of me, even if you never say it out loud." She placed the envelope into his hand. "I read this so many times, but I never answered. Not because I didn't want to, I just didn't know how." That night, Marlene made dinner for 2. She lit candles even though the power was working fine. Elias brought over an old bottle of wine someone had given him at work. It wasn't fancy, but it was enough. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table. "I'm sorry," she said, tears pooling. "I should have told you. Years ago, you have always been a son I could be proud of." Elias didn't cry. He just smiled. The kind of smile that comes not from relief, but from quiet confirmation. That maybe he hadn't imagined the hurt. That maybe he hadn't asked for too much after all. Later that week, Marlene called the family lawyer. She asked about refinancing her pension-backed savings and what would happen if she left something, not to both sons, but specifically to one. The lawyer, surprised but respectful, took notes. She also made another call to her doctor and scheduled a knee surgery she had delayed for years. Elias offered to be there during her recovery. She didn't hesitate before saying yes. When the date for her operation came, it was Elias who sat beside her bed holding her hand through pre-op anxiety. It was Elias who filled out the emergency contact forms, who memorized the list of medications, who stayed overnight on the stiff hospital chair. Not because anyone asked him to, but because that's what love does. It stays, it waits, it gives without fanfare. While Marlene slept post-surgery, Elias stepped out for air. He stood in the hospital's tiny courtyard, hands deep in his jacket pockets. Above him, the gray sky threatened rain. He didn't think about the years lost. He didn't dwell on the absences or the missed birthdays or the painful silences. After he came out, he thought only of now, of how care given without condition had the quiet power to remake a house and perhaps even a family. Back in the hospital room, Marlene stirred awake. Her first word was his name. It was late spring when Logan came back. Not with the same self-assurance he'd always carried, not with his expensive shoes and fast words in the air of someone used to being listened to. This time his shirt was untucked. His eyes were sunken, and the folder in his hand looked like it had been clenched too tightly. Elias was in the front yard tending to a small garden he'd planted with his mother after her surgery. The tomatoes were coming in late but healthy. He didn't look up until the car door slammed. Logan's voice broke the quiet. "Is Mom here?" Elias straightened, wiped his hands on his jeans, and nodded toward the house. "She's resting. What do you need?" Logan hesitated. Then, as if it hurt to admit, he said, "We didn't get the house. The financing fell through. We've been looking for a rental, but it's..." He stopped. "It's complicated." Elias didn't say anything. He let Logan fumble in the silence. "I just need Mom to reconsider, just for a few months, a small loan maybe, or if she could just co-sign another application. We'll make the payments, I promise." Elias turned back to the garden, clipped a yellowed leaf from a stem. She already made her decision. Logan stepped forward. "You think you're the family spokesperson now?" Elias didn't rise to it. He just looked up calmly. "No, but I am the one who's been here." At that moment, the door opened, and Marlene appeared on the porch leaning on a cane. She looked thinner than the last time Logan had seen her, but her gaze was clear. "I heard you from the window," she said. "Come inside if you want to talk, but don't come with papers." Inside, they sat around the same table where the original argument had sparked weeks earlier. The contract was still on Logan's mind, but this time he didn't take it out. Marlene spoke first. "You asked for trust, then you handed us a contract that said, 'Stay out.'" "It wasn't meant to be like that," Logan muttered. "It was just precaution." "I know," she replied, "but love doesn't survive in a house full of precautions." He looked down at his hands. For the first time, he looked smaller than his little brother. "Do you think I love Elias more than you?" she asked softly. Logan didn't answer, but the silence said enough. Marlene leaned forward. "I don't love him more, but he's the one who stayed when everything fell apart. He's the one who fixed what you never saw was broken. And not just the roof or the fence, but me, Logan. He helped me feel like I mattered again without asking for anything." Elias didn't move. He didn't need the praise he had never needed to be. First only seen Richard. Their father stepped in from the hallway. He'd been quiet for most of these months, drifting in and out of the background, like the ghost of a man too tired to fight anymore. But today he spoke. "I was hard on Elias, too quiet when he needed defending. But your mother's right. Trust isn't a transaction. You don't earn it by being the loudest. You earn it by being present." Logan rubbed his forehead. "I'm just trying to build a future for my family." Elias finally spoke. "So am I. I just didn't forget where I came from." It wasn't an accusation, just a fact. Logan sat back, his breath slowed. For the first time, he looked at Elias, not as the kid who got the hand-me-downs or the quiet shadow at the edge of the table, but as someone solid, someone who had held this fragile web of people together when no one else had. When Logan left that evening, he didn't slam the door. He didn't make promises or arguments. He just walked out with fewer answers than he came with. Later that night, Marlene sat on the porch with Elias. The garden smelled like mint and damp earth. Fireflies blinked lazily in the dark. "I never thought he'd listen," she said. Elias shrugged. "He might not, but it's a start." She nodded, then added, "You know, the funny thing is, I used to be scared of what people would think if they knew I had a gay son. Now I wish they'd ask me so I could tell them about you." Elias didn't reply, but in that quiet he felt something shift. Not victory, not closure, but weight, finally beginning to lift. 2 weeks later, Marlene turned 70. Elias offered to organize something simple, a small lunch in the backyard under the oak tree where she used to read to the kids. At first, she hesitated. There hadn't been many reasons to gather in recent years, but he gently insisted. Not for the celebration, he said, just for the people who still remember how to show up. So they sent out a few quiet invitations. Old neighbors, a friend from her church choir, the woman from the pharmacy who always remembered her prescriptions. Nothing grand, just laughter, folding chairs, and a table full of potluck, dishes with more heart than spice. As the guests trickled in, so did the sunlight, soft and golden washing over the aging patio. And the worn but sturdy garden furniture Elias had refinished by hand. Near the end of the afternoon, just as Marlene was about to cut a modest vanilla cake, Logan appeared at the back gate. He didn't come with balloons or flowers, no gift bag in hand. His wife followed behind, holding their youngest, while the older child clutched something wrapped in loose blue ribbon. Elias glanced up from the cooler he was organizing. Their eyes met, no resentment passed between them, just a pause. Logan approached their mother, and for a moment looked like he might leave again. But instead, he pulled a folded envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. "I didn't know what to bring," he said quietly, "so I wrote something." Marlene opened it slowly, unsure what to expect. Inside was a handwritten letter. Not perfect, but raw, honest. An apology that didn't beg forgiveness, only offered recognition. And a final line that said, "If you ever feel ready to let me learn how to love better, I'll be here." She didn't cry, but her hands trembled slightly as she placed the letter beside her slice of cake. The children ran off into the yard. Logan and his wife stayed longer than anyone expected. They even helped gather plates and pour lemonade. It wasn't a reunion, but it was something close. As the last guest left and the sun dipped low, Elias remained in the yard to fold chairs and tie garbage bags. Marlene came out with a blanket draped over her shoulders and 2 mugs of mint tea. They sat together on the old porch swing, watching the garden breathe in the early evening air. After a long silence, she reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a receipt. "This came in the mail yesterday," she said, "from the bank." Elias didn't speak. He knew exactly what it was. She unfolded it, eyes scanning the small print. Loan for $700,000 approved, co-signed by an anonymous holding entity. Her eyes turned to him. "You did it, didn't you?" He sipped his tea. He would have lost the house and his kids deserve a roof. "But you didn't put your name on it." Elias nodded. "I didn't want him to owe me anything or even know he doesn't need to." Marlene leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then why?" He looked out over the yard, the place where for years he had sat as a boy in the shadows, the place where no one had ever saved a seat for him. And yet here he was, because sometimes the strongest kind of love is the one that doesn't ask to be seen. Marlene didn't reply, but her hand found his and she held it with the kind of grip that meant something had finally been understood. Not fixed, not reversed, but understood. In the weeks that followed, Logan never mentioned the loan. He didn't know how to. The mortgage approval came through a proxy, one of Elias's college friends who ran a private equity firm. There were no trails, no credit marks, no signature. Elias had to place. It was a ghost deed, a silent bridge, and it did what Elias had always done, held the family up without demanding applause, and maybe that was enough. Maybe being the forgotten son, the invisible sibling, the quiet gay child no one posted about. Maybe that role held more power than anyone ever realized. Because while the others chased success, Elias had become the kind of man who could carry others even if they never looked back. At the end of the season, Elias returned to his apartment in San Jose. He packed lightly, left behind the tools, and taped a note to the fridge. "Call me when the tomatoes are ready. I'll bring the bread." Marlene kept that note on the fridge long after the tomatoes had ripened. Do you believe that love without recognition still matters? Or does being seen give love its weight? Let us know in the comments. And if this story moved, you don't forget to subscribe to Heart Stories, where silent resilience becomes the loudest truth. Would you like a shortened version or a script-style adaptation next?